In this video, we're going to take a look at snapshots. Snapshots give us a way to freeze a virtual machine at a particular moment in time and then give us the ability to revert back to that moment in time in the future. This is typically done by just separating the base disk files from whatever was done after the snapshot was taken. And the delta, the difference between the base and the new stuff, goes into another file. If we create another snapshot, then we create another file. And then on the fly, we reassemble all of that. It doesn't perform that badly, although if we get longer and longer and longer, then when it comes time to clean them up, it can be rather lengthy and dirty. So if we want to take a snapshot to be able to return a virtual machine to an earlier state, one of the problems that we have is that returning a machine to a previous point in state could cause problems for it. If it was running, first of all, rolling it back that way might do something strange, or your application might do something unexpected in that case. If I right-click on a virtual machine and go to the snapshot options, I can just say take snapshot. I'm going to call this dirty snapshot. I'm not going to snapshot the virtual machine's memory, and I'm not going to quiesce the guest file system. So I'm going to take a snapshot of the disks. It's going to now split the base disk onto now the changes. If you were watching in the recent tasks, the top one there, create virtual machine snapshot, happened very quickly. However, if I had chosen those other options, like to snapshot the memory and also to quiesce the guest file system, I would have had a much cleaner snapshot. What would have happened in that case, I actually would have taken the entire image of what was in memory and also stored it along with the snapshot so that I could put not only the disk of the system at that previous point in time, but also the memory of the system. In that case, I could actually do this live and I could reapply that snapshot and bring the machine up to a running state. If I need to revert for testing purposes, it's useful to be able to revert back to the previous state. But being able to revert back to a previous state and be ready right at that moment to run another test would save us time and have a return. We also have that option to quiesce the guest file system, and that's going to ensure that snapshot-aware applications are going to know that a snapshot's going on, and they should stop writing to the disk temporarily while the snapshot actually occurs, so that they don't lose any disk writes or that they don't interfere with the snapshot process. Those things together will take longer, or at least freezing the memory will take longer if you include it in the snapshot, but will allow us to get a more consistent result rather than something that's really more crash consistent. So if you're going to snapshot virtual machines and not have all those memory and file system options, it may not really be all that safe. It's basically going to return the disks back the way they were, and then the virtual machine is going to shut down. So if I right-click on this virtual machine, and on snapshot I say I want to revert to the current snapshot or to the most recent snapshot, we'll see that happening. If I go into the snapshot manager, I can take additional snapshots and I can jump back and forth to them. So maybe I want to delete that old snapshot, but I want to keep my dirty snapshot. So if I click on that one and say delete, then you'll see what ends up happening. It actually merges that into the host, and now we just have the delta files associated with our dirty snapshot. We can also remove that dirty snapshot, in which case we won't be able to roll back to it anymore, but all the files will be consolidated. So you really don't want to leave 10, 20, 30 snapshots open. Performance is not necessarily so bad, but when you go to remove them, especially if you try to remove all of them at once, it's going to take a very long time to have it reconstruct all of those files. So you'll want to think about that as a best practice and don't keep snapshots around for too long. You can also create quite complex chains of snapshots if that's necessary to return back to a previous point in a test for reproducing a bug or something like that, where it has to be a very specific stage. You can even create scripts that would generate all these snapshots for you as part of the testing process. And in those cases, once again, cleaning up those snapshots could be a rather lengthy process. Again, you could automate it, but it could be a lot of work on the system for it to actually do that. vCenter actually doesn't really expect huge batch jobs to be occurring. So if you were to do that from inside vCenter, vCenter may actually lose the monitoring of that job because it times out. So the job actually continues, but vCenter just says, this job's going too long. I don't know what's really happening with it. So huge jobs. vCenter is not great at handling that. So if I do roll this machine back, we can see in the console that the machine's going to go down and then it's going to basically drop those changes. And from there, I can bring the virtual machine back up. Or if I go into my snapshot manager, we can actually potentially jump forward to another point in time anyway as well. In this case, I have a snapshot for this virtual machine that I did take while the machine was running. I included the memory as part of the snapshot. So in that case, it's a little bit different. And when I apply my snapshot and I tell it to revert, we'll get back up to a running console. So if I go ahead and open my console here for this machine. So if I go in here and say under snapshot that I want to revert to current, or go to snapshot manager and choose go to, it's going to roll me back, but we're going to see that I lose connection with it for a little while, and then it rolls it back live. At this point, we've rolled the computer's memory back in time. Network connections are no longer established. Old connections that the machine thought it had, it's going to try and connect to them and things and see that they've all terminated. And, user connections are going to be terminated and they're going to have to reconnect to the VMs, but it could be useful. Proceed carefully and make sure that your application supports it. If you find that you have some sensitive data that you never want to roll back in time, or maybe as part of your process, you want to snapshot the system disks and not the data disks, then what we can do is we can have the disks operate independently. And if you go into the properties of a VMDK, you'll see that there is actually an option for independent, and we can say that it doesn't participate in the virtual machine snapshots. If you want to snapshot those files, you'll need to go on the shell and use something like VMKFS tools to do it. A lot of people use snapshots in their storage arrays, and that's perfectly viable, and that can work well. However, your snapshots in the storage array may be at the LUN level, and that may be a data store that's shared amongst multiple virtual machines. So make sure that your SAN snapshots are configured appropriately to what you're going to be using it with. So snapshots can be useful, and there's a lot of ways that we can take advantage of them for disaster recovery, testing, and other purposes. Storage snapshots can be very useful, and we can replicate those storage snapshots to a site that was synced with the base data. And we can actually then integrate VMware Site Replication Manager with that inter-site SAN replication and have a mirrored VMware environment that's ready to take over. And I can either synchronize that in real time or, again, use this snapshot concept at the SAN level to do that. Look at what your storage can provide to you, because there's some very good functionality that might be available or that you might want to make the investment in.